this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, February the 26th. We're starting late today. I had a little bit of a thing that delayed my start. I'm still having problems with my Twitter feed, too, and I don't really know what's going on with Twitter, that it's just not managing to load things correctly. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Maybe I should let my new suspender actually suspend this tab, but I don't know. I don't know why that would be an issue. Yeah. So, hey, we've got a new Shadowverse tie-in. It's 7 stories. 7's with an S story in Shadowverse anime tie-in, which this kind of looks like some kind of mobile game by the looks of it. Like, this character does not particularly well match to any of the Shadowverse characters, and then some of these other characters sort of match, but sort of don't. Yeah, so I've been playing Danganronpa. I'm either I am like maybe 2 to 5 to 10 hours away from finishing the game because I'm on the final trial and we've revealed the mastermind, who the mastermind is, and the game doesn't feel like it was going to pose as many mysteries as it seems like it might have been. Certainly some of the ideas that I've had haven't really fleshed out in any way, so it would be weird. Certainly, I was thinking maybe there'd be alternate realities or clones, and if there are alternate realities and clones, then they haven't really given any bit of evidence to that. This is just wild speculation on my part, so I don't feel like I'm probably spoiling anything much. You can see here I didn't really accomplish anything off of last stream. And since we're starting late today on a Friday, I kind of want to wrap up early. I did work on my router, installed most of the settings except for the quality of service settings, and now I'm just been doing a burn-in test for the past 2 days after Wednesday's stream, just to make sure everything's working and working fine. I think, unless I properly made backups of everything, I think I may have lost 100% of everything that was on the separate flash drive. That was kind of like an internal hard drive that you're not supposed to be writing that much to because you're burning out, and maybe that was the problem in the first place, is that I actually burned out the flash memory, the JFS partition on my router. So I'm gonna definitely have a rethink about what I bother to write there as far as emailing daily logs encrypted from the router, particularly since at the end of the day I don't really want the router to make too many logs anyways, because more often than not that's just going to be information that's used against you versus information that's actually useful, particularly if you're not in a debug mode and your router is just working fine. But I do want that code, certainly, and to potentially have lost it when transferring from my old router to my new router, because I erased the old router when I installed the default firmware again. Sucks. And it still seems like the old router actually is broken. It would really suck if it turned out it wasn't, and I spent $250 on it, the exact same model, for no reason. But I could make use of that, certainly. Nothing is stopping me from potentially just installing a second router, if it actually works, on the other side of my house, and then doubling the range. I would also have some ideas as far as, since these routers are super fancy, you can plug in USB hard drives, so I might just plug in a fancy hard drive into each one as extra backup locations. Of course, how many backups do you really need in the same house before you're just kind of wasting your time? Because if the house burnt down, and all the backups would be gone anyways. But I could certainly see an argument about not just having all backups on my server, which my server I locked myself out of, and then I had to reinstall the boot code, as it were, because that's what I locked myself out of. And now that means I'm trying to do a partial down and dirty restore, which may very well turn out to be a nightmare. But I'm actually a little surprised I was able to even work on my server and my router a little bit anyways, because I'm really need to be focusing on finishing Danganronpa, and then I really need to put my foot down, start uploading videos. I haven't been uploading videos at all lately. I need to upload them, and I need to schedule them, which I definitely haven't been scheduling videos. Man, and I am just saying a lot today. There is, without trying to spoil or anything, there is a issue still that I'm running into where we are when playing Danganronpa, that they're revealing things, but the things that they're revealing seem like they don't really make any sense, because one revelation kind of makes this catch-22 that then questions a lot of it. In particular, there's a point, and this will be a slight spoiler, where a character's facial appearance becomes in question very late in the game, and it confuses the issue because you'd seen this character multiple times before in their face. And it seems to me, and I do suffer, I think, from slight face blindness, so maybe this is a case where it is affecting me and only me. But it really seems like because these are animated anime girls in the face that are in question, it seems like the real difference between what you'd seen before and what you'd seen up until this point was simply a matter of freckles. Like, in one instance a person had freckles, and in another instance a person didn't have freckles, and that then becomes kind of a pointless thing to worry about, considering how they had already had kind of a conversation around the idea. I'm gonna craft some cards here. That they had already kind of gone around the idea that you could use makeup to hide elements, so it's not crazy at all to think that somebody may have freckles on their face and simply wear makeup to cover freckles on their face. People in the real world do that all the time. So yeah, I just didn't fully appreciate that they seemingly haven't thought everything through, and instead what they've done is they've written backwards to solve something. And honestly, it feels like every chapter, if not parts of the chapter alone, were created on a week-by-week basis, in which they just did not have a plan at the beginning, and thus they're working from the seat of their pants instead of what you would expect would be somebody being more thoughtful about what the story was going to be and what the key elements were going to be and what was going to be dealt with. It's not uncommon to run into a few plot holes or inconsistencies, but this game feels like it is just full of it, and it doesn't feel like it's a smart enough game that is intentionally trying to highlight the fact that the story is full of inconsistencies to reveal something greater later. Although they did a little bit of that in the last 2 chapters. I also feel like I was very, very far ahead of where the story was, so there was at least 3 times in the last class trial where I answered the way I believe the truth is, and it penalized me for answering the way that I think was right. Although it did bring up a kind of pointless argument as to what the name of the mastermind is, because that it really could have been one of 2 names and I was using the other name, and it doesn't really matter because it was just really an argument around what the person was called, not an argument about who the person we were thinking about was. If somebody tells you their name is Bob and it turns out later that you find out their name is John, it doesn't really change or make a statement that inaccurate if you say Bob robbed the bank. Like, Bob, the person you're thinking of as Bob, can't stand up and go, actually my name is John, therefore I'm innocent. And that's pretty much what they were making an argument around, is that I was just naming the wrong person. So we should be able to get, I think, at least one of every card. But you can see how this process is time intensive and not really something I should be doing on screen, particularly right now since there's really not a lot to talk about. There are rumors that came out just along this time that the Sony State of Play happened, that the Sony Interactive Entertainment Japanese branch that created things like the Gravity Rush series most recently, and a few other things. I think Super Monkey Ball, maybe. No, that's Sega, I think. Ape Escape, I think, is what they made. Basically, they haven't made anything lately, and they've been allowed to go over budget and over schedule for a long time, which is something of a matter of pride, I think, of the Japanese, and that normally a Japanese company would be in big trouble if they were over budget and over time, but Sony of Japan, Sony being a Japanese company, clearly wanted a Japanese team to make games in Japan and Japanese focused games, and they seemingly have now moved to more of a global perspective, and they don't seem to care. Plus, let's face it, Sony is pretty much at this point, at least Sony Interactive Entertainment, is pretty much not a Japanese company. It is an American with some European influence company being run out of California by Jim Ryan. So undoubtedly there will be some kind of office in Sony Interactive Entertainment in Japan, but I don't, if this rumor is true, which this would be a big blow to the pride of Japan, and certainly would just help decrease the number of units sold as far as PlayStation 5s and PlayStation 4s. That's quite a scantily clad art piece. Yeah. That is, let's see, when did this get released? That's what we would like to know. Brigade of the Sky. Like, I just don't feel like Shadowverse would make a card like that anymore. Like, that's a lot of skin by the new standards. And you can see that certainly with the tie-in that's going on right now. Once again, they are tying in with a cell phone game that looks like it's for little kids. But yeah, that there is a chip shortage, which is making it very hard for any electronics to be purchased, and honestly, that might affect me at some point, because I was thinking I'm always potentially needing some kind of computer thing. So good thing I built a computer relatively recently, but I'm thinking maybe I should get a Nintendo Switch just out of caution. But that would be fairly crazy. I think what I'm going to have to do is just put that on the back burner, and I'll get a Nintendo Switch when a Nintendo Switch 2 is announced. Or maybe even if a Nintendo Switch 2 comes out, it would be potentially backward compatible so that the current Nintendo Switch games would actually be playable on it. That's another thought. Just skip this generation completely. I've skipped a couple generations at this point though, so at a certain point I'm just gonna have to either decide whether I want to play Nintendo games anymore. But yeah, I could see Sony simply saying that the reason the PlayStation 5 is not selling so well in Japan is because of chip shortages and supply issues, while ignoring the greater issue of how betrayed I think the Japanese audience, the Japanese gaming audience, is going to feel, particularly now hearing that their only first-party development company, I think it's the only first-party development team, is being laid off or scaled down. We're not getting specifics there. We have, however, been seeing a lot of Japanese game developers leave from established video game companies. Alright, so I'm going to just start with this 1-7 and call that a day. And that used a decent amount, like 3,000 of the vials in units of 50. See, how many pages would this really be left to fill? Actually it's not really that much, so we should just finish the job. Of course, going this way does require about 4 clicks, where it feels like there should be a button somewhere with a big warning on it to say craft 1 of everything you don't have 1 of, and then that button potentially should change to a craft 2 of everything, craft 1 more of everything you don't have 2 of, and then craft 1 more for everything you don't have 3 of. You could easily have a pop-up box to say bulk crafting. I don't know if the game really wants you to be crafting cards though. That might be the case. And it would probably be years, certainly, before I had enough vials to justify coming back and trying to get 3 copies of every card that I ever had. And it would probably be very unjustifiable to buy or purchase packs for old expansions in the unlimited section ever. We kind of need to focus all that free-to-play gold that we earn, which isn't even that much, to the new expansions. And then inherently, this is the dark side of any collectible card game, is that you will end up spending a lot of effort or a lot of money to get 1 of everything. But now I have a complete collection as far as the bronze cards for the 67 pages that is, the next thing would be to work your way up to the silver cards, and you can see that that would be a lot more work and a lot more time, and I have 13,000 gold, so it would potentially make sense. Like at some level it might make more sense to see this costs 4 times as much with 200 vials to craft this, so I'd run out of stuff fairly quickly. But it also might make sense at some point to go to any and then just go show me not basic but classic, and just say let me craft everything in classic and work from that perspective so that you have a complete classic set, and then there's just no reason ever to open classic card packs. Of course that would send you quite down the way. You can certainly see also there are some temporary cards, and ideally you would want them all to just be temporary cards. So like 800 for this card, 800 for that card, 800 for that card, 800 for that card. Is 800 the maximum for legendary? Are these legendary cards or are these? Well, let's check this one. This one's a legendary. Nope. See, like this card would need 3,500. So there clearly is a 1,600 also. And the most expensive is 3,500 because although maybe you're getting a slight discount from 3,600. Let's see. If we were to say, show me gold cards are 800, and then nearly 4 times that are legendary cards, which I do have a collection of every legendary card for 3,500. So yeah, which at a certain level maybe they realize that the only important cards are the legendary cards, and they've just given you everything you need, at least for classic. Alright, well, let's actually get to some gameplay. I did finish all of the solo, I think I mentioned that, and then let's go through the video game news, and then let's try to wrap up. We're still Dragoncraft and Havencraft, so not in a great position, and then we're still just trying to get the treasure chest playing ranked. Alright, so yeah, the G4 is still doing things. What's funny most I think about G4 is that they put out yet a different Friday like stream schedule, which I would have assumed that the stream schedule is the same, so maybe they're just gonna retweet a stream schedule every week just to remind people. At a certain point that'll get annoying, but since they are trying to set things up, I kind of understand it. In the same way that I would hope people wouldn't get annoyed with me if I decided to have a consistent schedule and announce it. I could easily put out notifications of like, hey, these new shows are starting at this point and they are airing at these times, and that might get more people to watch the pre-recorded footage. That almost certainly is a great idea that I won't actually take my own advice and do. But yeah, there's certainly a level there of weirdness that it feels like they're doing a different thing. Also, I'd say there's weirdness with with G4 in that they're kind of overly focusing around Pokemon. Even before a new Pokemon announcement was just made, there also was an Xbox Live shutdown, shutdown. It seems like, although I wouldn't be certain. I didn't see any big news talking about Xbox Live being down, but apparently somebody on Reddit said it was down. Sony, by the way, also apparently asked for the violence to be removed or reduced in Naruto Shippuden, one of the Naruto Shippuden games, which is just like full insanity. Like the idea or the gall, really, to even begin to suggest to remove violence in a fighting game is just so insane. But it is kind of one of those yet another points to point out that there isn't just a good system in Sony's censorship, and that they have been fairly ridiculous, and they must have gotten a decent amount of pushback in the past, but it seems like the Sony of California is not taking any of that pushback to heart, and instead they are just standing their ground.
Are the brightest stars in the sky.
Yeah, we'll see how well that works in the long run.
I shine. Mortals are adorable.
Moving on, we have a Komatsu article here. A game called Gloria Union Twin Fates in the Blue Ocean FHD edition launches March 18th in Japan. An FHD edition, FHD being a resolution that is only really mentioned for cell phones, as in full HD, as in 1080p, I think. What's funny though is I guess it's only coming to smartphones and Switch, and it was, I guess, originally a PSP game. I'm kind of wondering about the resolution of the PSP, because Danganronpa is also a PSP game, and there is particularly one scene where you are panning back and forth to see all of the characters, and it does just seem like a kind of ridiculously wide shot that should have probably been depicted in some better form or fashion. It kind of highlights the problem that there's 15 students in the beginning of Danganronpa, and then it quickly devolves down to 6 or 7 of them. 5 damage there, and do we want to evolve this?
It won't be long now.
Then end the turn. Yeah, this RPG, from the one screenshot I see, looks like an RPG, and that's pretty much all I can say about it. Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Death Park 2, which, I mean, I can't specifically just call this an immediate asset flip. This looks like there might be something here. Kind of feels like it's a first-person shooter where you're running around a world that would be the equivalent of a Halloween park. $5.99 English. What I guess I want to see here is from Euphoria Games. So Death Park 1 came out in 2019, and it's very positive. So, okay. Like, I guess I can't hate it. I feel like I probably did see this game too. So I'm going to put the first game on the wish list. I'm going to put the second game on the follow list so it gets a few more reviews. And we'll move forward. Like, it seems like if it took them 2 years from 2019 to 2021 to release a new game, they hardly are flooding Steam with cheap asset flip games. Next, we have a Gematsu article, The Wicked King and the Noble Hero teaser trailer. First details and screenshots. This looks like this is based on like a picture book, looking at all this art. Which that might be an interesting game, although it does kind of feel like it might just delve deep into RPG mechanics and might get fairly boring. Going cutesy is an interesting idea, certainly. Like, we don't need every single RPG to be a fantasy, straight, serious game. Let's see. Let's try to play this. Let's take this out. And then play those two. As part of the state of play, we have Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate being announced for the PS5. This is effectively a free upgrade, enhanced edition upgrade of the visuals of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. This character, it has been introduced. I don't know if that's because they moved the story forward or if they've just brought in a character that was missing before. Although, frankly, with the new 3D graphics, I kind of feel like the face of this character doesn't look not very nice. I don't know if it's specifically accurate to the way this character, I believe her name's Tifa, is supposed to look, but let's see. Like, the face does seem to be very Asian, which is fine, but it just also seems to be very bland, where a lot of the other faces were very more anime-esque and smoother. We'll get content ID'd if we're not careful. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure. That might... I'm not 100% sure if there is actual new gameplay and new enemies to fight here, or if they've just introduced a character that should have been in the story before and just wasn't, or what. I imagine also, even if you don't have the integrated version of the PlayStation upgrade, which is a free upgrade, and certainly Square Enix would have tried to charge you if they could get away with it, but I guess there was enough pushback that they knew that wasn't going to work. But I imagine you would still have the new character even if you didn't have the upgraded graphics. But yeah, here's the Friday schedule G4 put out, and it does seem to me like what we're seeing here is the exact same time for every single show. So that seems fairly insane. Why in the world would you have Attack of the Show or before the Attack of the Show at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and also X-Play at the same time, counter programming against yourself, and the esports show at the same time, counter programming, and whatever B4G4 is at the same time? It's like these logos don't even matter, and it's all just going to be the same schedule for everybody. But yeah, here you can see they're talking about Pokemon, and then they're talking about Pokemon Snap, so it's just like all Pokemon at this point. G4's favorite Pokemon. It seems really crazy. Here they're talking about Olivia Munn, who worked for G4 and for a brief time became an actress. I mean, she was always an actress even when she was working for G4, but she got on. She got to play Psylocke in one of the X-Men movies that almost certainly is not canonical. It would be interesting to see if she actually managed to get integrated into the Marvel Universe. That would be a big career boost for her. Xavier Woods, as aka Austin Creed, is as a wrestler making a show. More wrestlers, I think, are going to definitely be part-time hosts or full-time hosts on the new G4. Let's see, did they take the old schedule down? No, here was the Friday schedule before, and it was before Attack of the Show at 10:15 Pacific time, and then X-Play at 10:30 Pacific time. So they were only billing themselves 15 minutes anyways, but now they're billing themselves nothing at all. So it kind of feels like that's a mistake, like just complete incompetence on their part. And there's supposed to be a big production company behind all of this, and I know they'd be working from home, and that you should probably give them a bit more of a leniency, but there's definitely some just blatant incompetence to either cross promote 4 different shows at the same time on 4 different streaming services. Well, they're all on YouTube, but 4 different channels. Twitch only being streamed at the, well, the Twitch stream happening after the fact. At a certain point, this might have been a little bit crazy, but the idea of just live streaming some on-air conversations to make more content might work. Adam Sessler's Tested, back when it was just tested, introduced that idea, where they were having a lot of the, and Giant Bomb kind of did that too, where they were having a lot of the weekly group meetings where people were talking about what they were doing just publicly on the podcast, and then maybe there was a private parts of conversations after the weekly group meeting where if you wanted something discussed off air, you would potentially just make a note of it and discuss it later, showing just like how the sausage was made, basically. That might help you create some content. Certainly, kind of in the same way that my accountability sections every time I stream really shows how the sausage is made. Alright, let's play this. Then attack here, and there. They also are playing the new character as the new CEO of X-Play, kind of like a incompetent fool / Vince McMahon character. And I wonder how much of that we really will see if G4 ever gets going. Of course, I'm talking way too much about G4 at this point, because it very much could just come out like a soft fart, for lack of a better descriptor, and people could just be like, yeah, we don't care about it at all, and it could fail within 2 years. Right. That. And then let's go and evolve here. And attack with that.
Higher than the clouds, yup. Nom nom. Nom nom.
And that. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has a Insomniac Games narrative system designer job listing for Burbank, California. We might start to see some more job listings. There is something that feels very speculative about Japanese video game developers all either going to make their own companies or going to work for someone else, in that it may very well be a case of them finally just trying to get away from the big companies, and that seems fairly cyclical all around the world, where you have people break off from big companies to form their own, and then those new companies either become the new big companies or get acquired by the big companies.
You're a solid fighter.
But it also might be that there's some more kind of secrecy going on there, in that people may be going to form temporary new companies, and then those temporary new companies may get acquired by the likes of Microsoft. That's certainly what I would do, is I would have Microsoft swoop in, if I was in charge of Microsoft, and own 49%, if not all, of a company in Japan, and just be very hands-off with it and say, you guys just do what you want to do. Of course, inherently, almost all Japanese game developers want to go over budget and want to do something crazy and ambitious and too large for their own good. And maybe Microsoft would be willing to put up with that for a few years, but eventually somebody's going to have to rein in the budget. Because there's one thing Japanese anime will teach you, is that they want to go big and bold. They don't want to tell boring normal stories. You're not going to have something that is a simple, like, slice of life story from a Japanese creator, with the exception of that game The Simple Life, and even that seemed like it was a little crazier and more ambitious. Moving on, Gamatsu has Solar Ash narrated gameplay walkthrough for the PC, PS5, and PS4. This is a parkour game that was also announced in that it's parkour in that I think it's kind of on kind of a rails, sliding, running, and jumping. It has a fight mechanic that you also deal with, but you can see these blobs certainly are there to, the pink blobs are there to be collected, and then the black blobs are there to be attacked. But there definitely are lines clearly in this world, and it's slightly questionable how much gameplay you can really put up with this. I feel like this could be very finger blistering fairly quickly, or just very disorienting, or very short. It kind of feels like it's almost like a reverse Splatoon game, where the world is just covered in goo that I assume you're trying to get rid of the goo. And then there are some big moving Goliath bosses that you're going to have to take out too. It has a different art style for sure. Looks like it might be fine. Probably not a super amazing game or anything that is going to be a top tier seller, but not terrible either. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Beyond the Waterfalls, which looks like it's a multiplayer first-person shooter game. Looks a little asset flippy. Online PvP, $24.99, seems a little too high. Yeah, there seems to not really feel like there's a visual consistency here with it. And they're not really highlighting anything that looks amazing. Alright. Gonna go ahead and play this, I guess. And then go ahead and play this. Another game that was announced from a company called Slow Clap, or SLO Clap, I guess that's how you pronounce it. Slow Clap is a third-person action game called Sifu for the PS5, PS4, and PC. We should keep an eye out to see how many of these games are going to be on PC in general, because it may just be a matter of time that almost anything that comes out on PC is also it is also going to come out on the Xbox, which I think it is also worth mentioning that the memory expansion, the M2 sticks on the PlayStation 5, they've just now announced that they're going to start enabling that at some time during the summer. So if you were installing a ton of games on your PlayStation 5 since day one, there's a small chance you'd run out of space before you could put an M2 slot in it, because they're afraid of overheating. On the other hand, I'm not sure any of the memory card expansions for the Xbox Series X have actually been delivered or made. With the circuitry shortage in particular, I wouldn't be surprised if those have just not actually been available either. I feel like both systems could easily be updated to use hard drives just through USB hard drive if they don't support that right now, but you also need to consider that there is a high chance that the Microsoft hardware will be better programmed to adapt to that kind of stuff than the Sony hardware. Anyways, talking back about Sifu, I believe Sifu is a Japanese word for master, as in a karate master, or an honorific like that. So, but I could be wrong. It could be Sifu is a student, because they say Sifu tells the story of a young kung fu student. So, yeah. You can see that's very Japanese here. Bunch of Japanese people that I guess this is going to be probably somewhat like Karataka, in which you're just going to go down a line and fight people. They seem to have weapons. This feels a lot like the hallway fight in Double Dragon. Fighting a girl there, I think, for a brief moment. A lot of tattooed, I assume, Yakuza. And then at some point, I guess maybe you fight your master who had become corrupted. It's one of those games where it's very much just going to depend on how well, just how well your programming is as far as the game control mechanics. Right.
I'll preach to anyone who will listen.
My blade is your salvation.
Go ahead and evolve this.
I have
And then do that. Attack there. And we'll wait to play that. I'm playing all my cards so I could lose fairly easily here. Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Towermancer, which, yeah. This looks like a tiny tower game with maybe a little bit of a different gameplay in that there's some kind of overworld map. But I just don't feel like there's enough there. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if the overworld map that they briefly showed was actually just a level select and you have to build multiple towers. And inherently I don't see anything super wrong with this idea. It's just that the tower simulation games are not that interesting, and going in a fantasy realm is an interesting idea, but it's still not enough. $7.99, English, Portuguese, Brazil. Yeah. Well, see, it says level 13. And then we see all of this, almost like it's a tower defense game element too.
Phoenix graces you with her presence.
But yeah, just not enough. They also put a trailer out for Old World Soulstorm, which now launches April 6th. PlayStation 5 version free for PlayStation Plus members. So, once again, that is an Epic Games Store exclusive. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the ones listed for PC were Epic Games Store's exclusives. Probably going to see a decent amount of that for another year, even if developers have given up on that idea going forward. This looks fine as far as the Oddworld games, but it doesn't particularly look good enough to it just doesn't look good enough, frankly, to have me really want to play that series, because that series just never caught my attention.
Yum yums to fill my tum-tums.
Okay. For
Winds of light, show your might.
Higher than the clouds, yup.
I guess we can evolve there. And then we'll just leave it at that.
Nom nom.
Since I can't do anything else. I feel like the PlayStation Sony State of Play was fairly pathetic. We may just start seeing more states of play though, and so they may just establish that we're never going to have any announcements between Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo, or anyone else, frankly, that is as big as a annual E3 presentation. Which that's a good thing, frankly, because E3 was overwhelming. It would highlight far too many games and cause you to forget tons of games. Also, being an annual thing, a ton of games would get announced and then they would not be released for a year or two later. Next we have a game on Steam called North Modding Company Bergsbrook, which seems like that's the name of the developers, North Modding Company. Seems like you're controlling big machines in kind of a mining area, although it doesn't really seem like you're doing much mining or proper mining there. It seems like you're just kind of moving dirt around. $35.99. Third party EULA, English full audio. I am just not impressed with this. Yeah. Normally, what I've seen as far as mining nowadays is you either have very big tunnels and do tunnel mining, or you have explosive pit mining, in which there's just a pit that has a big spiral around it, and you get down to the bottom of the spiral in your vehicle, and then they lay a bunch of C4 around the wall of that pit and explode the other side of the wall where the spiral platform isn't, and then there's just a bunch of bulldozers that would then scoop up the dirt and take it up to a facility at the top of the pit to filter things through. And they very possibly fill in one pit with the unimportant elements of the other pit, and it's all very much feels like it's done while sitting in the comfort of a big vehicle instead of going down a route of getting out and getting a pickaxe and going to mine for something like that. It's much bigger in scale than that. Even if you are tunnel mining, it seems like that is mostly done with vehicles. And I guess it often depends on what you're trying to mine and how big those veins really are. Speaking of big, this next game is tagged with nudity, and there is just a giant amount of characters here with giant breasts and well, let's show one. Here we go. We got like giant breasts and giant butts. There's this game called League of Maidens, tagged as nudity casual customizations. They have a standard edition and an ultimate edition for $13.49 for the standard, $26.99 for the other. And it seems like it almost certainly is just an asset flip character customization. It has in-app purchases. It says it has English full audio. The actual gameplay seems to be running around kind of as a superhero, shooting things and fighting monsters. Seems like it is kind of, yeah, the Avengers if you like big busted or big bootied characters. Which I can't say I hate that, but I would say that the anatomical proportions that are being shown here are not to my personal fetish by any means. They seem to be far out there, far too wide, far too big and wild. But on a certain level, I would also say, as an adult game, and you have to kind of hold it from that perspective, it looks like somebody is trying to put content into this, that they're not just being ridiculous. A lot of these characters do feel like they're done up like Spider-Man, or Archangel, or Cheetah, or Captain America, except for just female 3D models. Sailor Moon, for instance, in the different Sailor Scouts. One with green skin and one with tiger stripes. So you can kind of make your own customized character, I imagine. Although, it would be kind of weird if you got into this game and the boob slider started at giant and only got bigger.
Let's try throwing in a dragon's claw.
I kind of just have to question, though, whether there could be enough of a playership here. It's a single player game, so I guess it doesn't matter, but I just don't know if there would be enough polish on something like this, or whether this would only deliver in the sex and not deliver in actual gameplay. I think almost certainly it's only going to deliver on the sex. Let's see. I still don't want to discard anything, so I'm stuck with not discarding that card. Moving on, we have a mobile studio called Bebop B, which has netted $2 million to boost live ops and user acquisition, which that's not really where you want to be raising money. I don't know if it's really video game related, but there was a company called Fry's Electronics that apparently has not been restocking for like 6 months, and they have a small but devoted collection of stores that they had. That would sell PC parts, and it kind of sucks that there aren't any PC specialist stores left. Maybe some Tiger Directs, but I don't know if Tiger Direct is still in business. And Best Buy is still around, but Best Buy is kind of the middle ground of PC components. But this is a lot of the way Amazon's fault more than anyone, in the fact that Newegg or Amazon or any of the of a few other dozen trustworthy or slightly trustworthy sellers can definitely have computer components inventoried in a warehouse way better than having those computer components at a store to go and get it. Even if you are desperate for, say, a power supply, which is exactly what I needed when my computer broke about a year ago, I was completely unable to, in a quick turnaround day time, go to an Office Max or an Office Depot or any other stores really that would have allowed me to get that new power supply and actually fix my computer within a reasonable amount of time by my standards. Instead, it was quicker still to order something from Amazon.com and have it delivered next day shipping. Which I guess that does make an argument for having like a backup power supply, but they're too expensive, frankly, to do that unless you have a whole business you're trying to maintain. Individual people doing that. Okay. Clash number 2.
That won't do.
You will know got a death wish. Step up.
See. So yeah, Fry's Electronics shut down all of their businesses. They did it in a very abrupt manner too. Normally, you have going out of business sales, or you just you try to clear out inventory. Instead, they just said we're going out of business as of midnight tonight. And there really hadn't been any talk. Maybe it was just a private company, and thus they didn't have to make any kind of disclosures or anything like that, and they were able just to go out of business. I don't know. Even in a big city, it's definitely hard to pull off competition with Walmart to sell TVs, which is going to have to be still a decent amount of your sales. And printers and ink and things like that are all the bigger sales items. You definitely aren't going to get somebody to come into your store on a weekly basis if you're selling computer parts, or most people. Even in the middle of the pandemic, when everybody needs webcams and everybody needs laptops, people are still not willing to go into stores. And certainly the pandemic also might limit who can go into stores anyways. We may just be very much entering a world where everything is always shipped and everything is always delivered, and we just desperately need more competition to Amazon, and Amazon just needs to be broken up in general. I did get one of the comic books that I had ordered used. And yeah, I recall one of them was labeled as a library copy, and when I got it, it was definitely a book that had been in the library. It had stickers all over it. The back cover was bent on one edge, but I mean that was the risk I was taking, certainly, and that was the amount of money I was willing to spend. I am in a bit of a quagmire now where I might get a little bit snobby, and I might decide to throw away the library copy and get a new copy of that one volume of the trade paperback. It kind of depends on what quality the other 10 books or 12 books are. If it's like, yeah, 2 of them are really bad, but the rest of them look as good as new, then I would be more than happy to replace one for bookshelf consistency. Otherwise, I may just live with them if they're all bad and just be like, well, whatever. That's not the nicest, most flashiest thing ever. It's hardly like most of the Blu-rays and DVDs I have, which were brand new, and some of which are still in packaging. I actually moved my record player, which I haven't used the record player probably in 3 to 4 decades. I'm probably exaggerating there a little bit, but I had a plastic cover over it, and I decided to wash that off, and it just clumped off a ton of dust on it. I'm not sure that record player ever worked, but I'm holding on to it for just stupidity reasons. But yeah, if I got really ambitious, there's a decent amount of old stuff I have as far as AV, old surround sounds. I have a laser disc player I've never really used, a tape deck player I've never really used. I had like a full AV system at back in the day.
My blade is your salvation.
And so much of that stuff just doesn't matter anymore. I was briefly thinking about building a karaoke machine. I don't think I'll probably go into that, but it does present a different perspective on trying to like do DLNA streaming of music and video, and that if you wanted to try and integrate karaoke into that, you basically need a special software that would then convert MP3 or FLAC plus G files that have the graphics into just a regular video, and hope that the streaming and everything on that would work. But there is also a decent argument to not do any of that, depending on your karaoke software, whether it stops or pauses when you stop singing, and whether it moves a highlight forward is questionable. Like, I'm not sure how many karaoke machines do that or don't do that, and maybe only games do that, and not true karaoke machines. So there is potentially an argument to having a separate device to do something different, and even if you were streaming through DNLA karaoke music, then the integration of a microphone there is pretty much non-existent, because any kind of streaming device almost certainly does not have the connections and hookups to allow you to put a microphone input on it. Anyways, moving on, we have a game here called Dracula with a capital A, and it's just a platforming game where you throw spikes and jump on it. It seemingly is more of a Van Helsing game than a Dracula game. 59 cents, bunch of languages, nothing particularly interesting there. I need to hurry up. Let's see. Yeah, Gamma Sutra retweeted a 2015 article about the post-mortem of Silent Hill The Room, which doesn't matter. OpenCritic has Another Eden, The Cat Beyond Time and Space, which is coming out from the writer of Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VII, which, okay, seems like that's doing its own thing.
It won't be long now.
With a robot girl and a frog and pirate looking characters here. More of a fairy-esque magic character. If anything, there might very well be an argument that Final Fantasy, as it goes forward, has to be more and more realistic and less about the chocobos and the bunny girls, in the weirder characters. And so anybody who was into those weirder fantasy elements or sci-fi elements, because sometimes Final Fantasy is sci-fi, sometimes Final Fantasy is fantasy, usually it's a little bit of both, they might want to leave and make a less constricted story. Double Fine on the 25th mentioned that the Psychonauts 2 is going to support English, French, Italian, German, Spanish, and Brazilian Portuguese. Apparently some people were asking about what language that's going to be. It's going to support not Chinese, not Japanese, not Korean, so none of the Asian countries, not Russian, or Ukrainian, or anything Western or Eastern Bloc, as it were. But all the North American languages and a lot of the Central and South American languages and a lot of the European languages. So we kind of know what regions they're targeting towards. Although at the end of the day, that we still need to see Psychonauts 2 actually get made and released, which that's slightly questionable in itself. So here's Gamasutra. There's a report that PlayStation is slowly closing down its first-party Sony Interactive Entertainment Japan studio after 28 games, 28 years. Which honestly, 28 years isn't even that much. Let's see. They're mentioning here like the Bloodborne producer and the Silent Hill creator Kiichiro Toyama, but I'm not sure either one of those were working for Sony of Japan. I thought almost certainly Kiichiro Toyama would have been working for Konami, and Bloodborne I thought was Square Enix, but maybe I'm thinking wrong there.
Let's try throwing in a dragon's claw.
This was a terrible card to play. They mention here also Toyama formed a new development studio called Bokeh Game Studio. So now there's rumors that are probably true that a number of staff have left the Japanese studios and joining with Bokeh Game Studio, while others are staying at Sony via jump to the Astrobot developer ASOB. So there is one other Japanese game developer. So in a lot of ways it may be more of just reshuffling the decks than anything else. But certainly that is not a pride-inducing announcement or rumor to come out. Sony hasn't confirmed any of it. Here we have a game called Portal's World, which looks like it is a tower defense game. Let's see, $3.99 English full audio. Let's see. What else could we do?
My dragon and I are one.
Guess we have to do this and hope it hits that.
I'll see you in purgatory.
I guess that works.
Come on, partner. Yeah.
I wasn't good enough.
Yeah, this Portal's World is early access, $3.99 English full audio. It is, to me, just looks like a tower defense game, more than anything, and just doesn't look very visually polished. So let's move forward. Here we have Gamasutra saying Nintendo is halting original 3DS and 3DS XL repairs in Japan. I feel like they had already done that around the world. So just more evidence that everybody had already known that the 3DS was done for. Some of these news articles are just so straightforward, there's really nothing to say. Here we have a game on Steam called Papercraft, which just looks like a Minecraft thing. $8.49, bunch of languages. Yeah. Now is particularly a bad time to try and get interested in a Minecraft clone, considering how there's a lot about to be released for Minecraft in general. Them effectively just adding a whole new layer to the world. If anything, I would slightly question the
Allow me to test your worth.
I would just slightly question
It won't be long now.
the quality of the expansion in Minecraft. Like, I feel like there should be probably some new enemies in the new layers or something else to mine. Creepers and skeletons and all of that have been so dominant underground in Minecraft that even if it was a higher chance of charge creepers or a different kind of spider or something else. And I know they had kind of already introduced a character in the Minecraft, so maybe this new area will just see more of that new character that can, I think it's blind and it sees you by hearing you. So if you make noise by jumping up and down, it finds you. Here we have Techraptor covering the same story. Sony Japan reportedly shutting down this year. So the Astrobot developer Asobi team will remain. Yeah, I think I did at one point say there's a chance that that we may very well have a lot of Japanese companies just give up instead of trying to follow COVID restrictions and things like that. That the idea of working from home and changing the way things are done is just so antithetical as far as how business is done in Japan, where they are backwards and they're still using fax machines and just everything needs approval from a manager that needs approval from a higher manager that needs approval from a higher manager. That, yeah, I imagine it's hard for a Japanese businessman to even understand the idea of working from home and changing the way things are done. And so we may see a lot of companies that are just unwilling to change. And inherently, I guess that is an attitude that's prevalent in a lot of Japanese situations, is that they are just so stuck on tradition that they would rather let the whole country die instead of changing their society enough to allow a next generation to have enough hope to have kids. Well, we got a Bloomberg article here that says EA Arts has canceled Gaia game after years in development. I think we'll get this article somewhere else. I just want to highlight how terrible Bloomberg is without the ad blocking on, and the ad blocker in particular was blocking everything. It's just like, oh yeah, you gotta pay us for $9 to look at your articles. It's like, nope, I think not. Oh, I did get DNS Crypt to work again. There's seemingly a couple of DNS Crypt servers that seem to work still with DDWRT. So AdGuard was one of them, which was just not one I was using. So I enabled that as I was setting up the router, and yeah, seemed like it worked fine. Also, my quality of service seems to be working fine right now, so I'm not sure if there's ever going to be any need to enable specific quality of service rules. And that probably is for the better. The more tweaking, the more room for more mistakes. So if I can just tell it the default stuff, that this is my upload speed, this is my download speed, limit all activity coming from the network to that, that might be fine. Like, we haven't had any frame drops today, nor have we had any lockups as far as Shadowverse is going on. So until I start to see some of that, I probably won't implement the quality of service as much. But what I do need to do is take the settings, which I just have in a notepad file, and save that file in case my computer decides to shut down randomly. I took a bunch of screenshots and put them in paint files, and I need to save whatever of that is still needs to be saved. Amulets. Can we put 2 amulets on the field? I don't think so, so let's just do this. Check here, and the check here. Gamma Sutra has an article here. The ongoing Fallout 4 DLC lawsuit could impact Microsoft's takeover of Bethesda. Apparently there was a lawsuit filed in 2019 where Bethesda misled consumers by promising the $30 season pass of Fallout 4 would include every single piece of DLC for the title. The company claimed the value of the season pass content would be at least $40. They say players were eventually left shortchanged when Bethesda introduced the Creation Club in 2017. Creation Club was billed by the studio as a collection of all new content for both Fallout 4 and Skyrim, including fan-made mods, along with content created by Bethesda itself. The content, however, wasn't made available to Season Pass owners, and that's where it alleges that Bethesda crossed the line. Okay, so there's an interesting argument. I don't know if I would have immediately agreed with that, but it is something I feel like should be probably fought through the courts, is that there is an argument there to say these people who bought the season pass, which might include me, frankly, probably do deserve all content from the Creation Club if that's what's promised. And I'm sure that's not what they were planning, but Bethesda needed to be smarter than that. And frankly, it would not cost Bethesda anything to instead of maintaining this lawsuit, to simply agree to say, yeah, we'll give you a digital copy of everything in the Creation Club. And if anything, that highlights the over focus around having the Creation Club and creating something like the Creation Club in the first place, where most game developers during the time would have thought that whole idea was pretty dumb and not tried to put in-game purchases. Gamma Sutra does have a new article promoting the GDC showcase for Obsidian's storytelling process. Which honestly, at this point, I probably should just, if anything is talking about GDC, it's an advertisement from Gamma Sutra because our parent company owns both. And I need to just quit talking about GDC because I don't feel like there's anything of value from GDC that comes out and that the average person gets to see. So yeah, going forward, I'm going to try and filter those articles, and that'll save us some time. TechRaptor has an article here. Apparently, the plans for Dragon Age 4 multiplayer have been canceled, and it will just be a single-player experience. This is due to the success of a previous single-player experience of like Mass Effect or something, or Jedi Fallen Order. I guess Jedi Fallen Order allowed them to make the argument to cancel the idea of Dragon Age 4 being multiplayer because nobody wanted it to be multiplayer. I don't think anybody really did, and there was questions galore certainly as to how it was going to be multiplayer anyways. Okay.
What do we have here?
Go ahead and hit that.
So I said, I will rise again.
Transformation! Holy champ! Witness the power of prayer!
That. And
My
that.
blade is your salvation.
So yeah, I think Dragon Age 4 people can breathe a sigh of relief around that, but that doesn't guarantee that Dragon Age 4 will come out in a timely manner or be any good. On top of the upgrade to Final Fantasy VII, they are also selling Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis for the iOS and Android, which seems to be more cell phone versions of telling the same story. They're calling it a chapter structured single player experience that covers the whole Final Fantasy VII timeline. Which, when they say Final Fantasy VII timeline, I question whether that actually implies all of the Final Fantasy VII timeline or just the Final Fantasy VII remake timeline, because it could be either one, frankly.
I'll give it to anyone who will listen.
Wings of light, show your might.
Plunge to the depth. Your sentence is death. The world cycles on.
That.
Witness the power of
That.
prayer.
The leader has 5 defense. We don't have 5 defense.
I go with the wind.
They also have a Battle Royale action game called Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier announced for iOS and Android. So, if anything, this really just kind of highlights the problem with Square Enix, is that they have kind of completely abandoned the idea of even having... Oops, I should have played this. They've kind of abandoned the idea completely of having any games that aren't Final Fantasy related, and they're just doubling down and tripling down on Final Fantasy. They got rid of IO Interactive and the Hitman stuff. Here we have a game on Steam called Mogu's Adventure, which looks like it's a platforming game. Looks like it might be Chinese, $1.99. Doesn't look terrible, just looks like it's obviously a cell phone game that has been ported. There is just nothing there of interest. Right, are we down to 5? Draw a card. Alright, well, let's play this. And let's do this. And play this. If I evolved this would have done 9 damage. It still wouldn't have won. Yeah, I've lost. Unfortunately. Unless this had ward. Unless he somehow does 4 damage to himself. All he has to do is attack and he'll win. Even though his attack would do 4 damage at the end of the turn to everyone, which
This is not the end.
we just don't get to that point where it would have been a tie. Let's see. Next, still struggling here, obviously, to get Dragoncraft and Havencraft things. Next, we have a game on Steam called Relief Shin I Naru Anata E, which that's quite a long-winded title for what looks like a visual novel. Yep, looks kind of like it's just a kind of slice of life romance visual novel. English is not supported. $26.24 Japanese and Chinese, which I guess that makes that an easy decision for me. We'll see if those we'll see if we have any games like that translated to English later. Here we have a game called Orb Overload, which seems just to be a platforming game. Maybe there's a little bit more to it. It seems to be there's a time management elements where you have to touch or do something to reset. You have to touch a blue orb and swing on it or be near it to reset your timer. $7.99 is way too expensive for that kind of game. So, yep, we'll leave that with that.
These weapons are for hunting
Play
dragons.
that. A game called Fanbyte. This is interesting. It has like an accessibility menu. I want to see what that actually does on the website. But according to this website, Fanbyte, Monster Hunter Rise is coming to the PC in 2022. There's a decent argument, certainly, to the idea of the next Monster Hunter game being the game to jump on. Although this isn't labeled as Monster Hunter World 2, which maybe means Monster Hunter Rise plays a lot like the other Monster Hunter games and less like the Monster Hunter World games. Oops. Probably not the one I wanted to discard. So when I click on the accessibilities menu, it has a contrast, it highlights links, bigger text, pauses animations, it's dyslexia friendly, then cursor and tooltips and line height. Interesting, this is by userway.org. And if you click line height, you can make the line height bigger. A lot of this is just straight up CSS though. Like, there's really no big change there. Yeah, there's a lot of this is just straight up stuff that you would change. You could easily change. You can invert colors. But that is nice. That should be just like a new standard in HTML6. Or which I assume is the next HTML. Last I heard we were still using HTML5. Just a new standard that all CSS encoding must be considered or capable of doing what we just saw there and more, instead of websites inherently assuming that somebody has their own setup, and because of that they because they have their own setup, then they have to.
True masterwork.
Well, Bloomberg now won't let me see any of their articles, so yeah, at a certain point I guess I'll just blacklist any articles from Bloomberg. You keep getting them retweeted by other people, unfortunately. Man, it really is like 3 articles that you can see a month, and that's it. So yeah, I don't even know what that article is about. Again, I guess I don't even care, really. It was about the Sony storage thing. I had already read the headline on it, so that doesn't matter. Here we have a game on Steam called Airstrife Assault on Aviators, which is just a shoot 'em up game. More of a Western looking shoot 'em up game. And widescreen, which, I mean, for a shoot 'em up, it looks fine. At a certain point, I don't know if you can do much better graphics in a shoot 'em up without confusing the issue quite a bit. If you had hyper-realistic 3D models of planes and the texture of the ground below below the planes, it probably would be pretty bad. There also seems to be multiplayer up to 4 players, which in widescreen that does make a lot of sense too. So there kind of is this possibility out there where we could run into an upgraded version of shoot 'em ups with 4 players being standard and widescreen being standard. And see, when that says they're thinking, I assume that it's just a case of the character player is actually thinking, and it isn't a case of darn it. Reduce damage from effects to 0. Okay, here. And here. And then this clash would give me 1.
Be gone. Reached enlightenment? Stream on.
A fitting end.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Winning Love by Daylight, which looks like a Western visual novel. I don't hate this art style though, when you zoom in on it. I kind of hate that the trailer is showing just a person talking, or a live streamer streaming the game. Early access, free. I mean, I guess it's English only. I guess I can put it on the fall list because I kind of do like the art style. But almost certainly, as a free game, whatever is going to be here once it gets out of early access is going to be whatever it is. I would say also, you have a nice variety of the girls here. Not going specifically for any one theme here. You've got kind of a goth. You've got a nose ring party girl. You've got more back to nature good girl style. You've got more of a rich girl. You've got African. That's the wrong personality to apply to that. Kind of richer but nice girl. Where this other one looks like she might be more trouble. Okay. Put this on the field.
Did someone call for a
I
medic?
do this. My ball up here.
It won't be long now.
Drink every drop. Concoctions away.
That. 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 And that.
Bottoms up.
Next we have a game on Steam called Koi Farm, which
Birth to a new world.
more than most koi farms actually looks like there might be some actual game here, but I don't think there's enough actually to play. $2.99 English Dutch. You know, there is an idea around this. Instead of making a fishing game where everybody's just trying to hook the fish and potentially kill and hurt the fish, having a breeding game where you're actually trying to grow koi and fish seems a little bit nicer. Maybe it's not really that much nicer if you've got them in this tiny little breeding ponds and you're just breeding them for your own personal amusement. But at a certain point, that's what you do with almost any pet, is that you're keeping them alive or breeding them for your own amusement outside of their natural habitat. Let's see. I want to play this.
Time to say goodbye.
Hit that.
The world cycles on.
And then go ahead and play this.
Seek what is not there.
And hit that. Hit that. And hit that again. So yeah, I'm gonna put Koi Farm on the fall list, just in the hope that maybe it could be a nicer idea. Next we have a game on Steam called Big Chick, which looks a little too simplistic in the graphics. Looks like you play as a chicken running around trying to collect other chickens, baby chickens. $2.69 English, Russian, Ukrainian. Yeah, seems just like it's a low effort game there. TechRaptor has all of the PlayStation announcements. So there was apparently Crash Bandicoot trailers. Knockout City was a game I saw too. So this, I believe, is Returnal. And this is Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, PlayStation 5 features trailer. And then this is Knockout City, which Knockout City does kind of feel like it might be a slightly more adult version of like Splatoon. It's kind of dodgeball with some other effects, which maybe there was an idea there that will work. Apparently you can turn people into balls. Sifu was announced, Solar Ash was announced. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach showed off some of its gameplay, and it definitely looks like a different kind of game than the previous Five Nights at Freddy's. First of all, there's an actual character you're playing as, or you can see a security guard, and you are going to be chased by real 3D models. I feel like this wasn't actually created by the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, who I don't think is actually that good of an animator or game creator to do something like that. And I think this is very much more going to be a 3D horror game than you normally would expect from that.
Call for a medic? Bottoms up.
I didn't move fast enough. But also, I would say the Security Breach looks much more like a game than anything else. They have Kiana Bridge of Spirits, which I believe we've already probably seen this. But this is, I think, maybe a new trailer. No, maybe we haven't seen this game. I think I have, but it's kind of hard to tell. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2 or 3 different games that look somewhat like this. And yeah, from that trailer, it looks like it is going to be an action kind of RPG type experience. Maybe not RPG. Deathloop was shown off again. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Integrade was announced. Integrade DLC. Maybe the new character, where the upgrade may be its own separate thing.
Come, my swarm brothers, rise to greater heights. Higher
Okay.
than the clouds.
So this would do a massive 4 damage to his attack. It's not gonna work. Although, if I had attacked him, then I don't know. Okay. So the DLC is an expansion where you play as the energetic ninja named Yuffie, not, yeah, whatever I was calling her. Tifa. Tifa's the other character. So that's Yuffie.
Witness the fury of my curse.
And the expansion itself is called Remake Integrate. But I don't know if the expansion does anything other than tell you a short story with Yuffie, or doesn't tell you any real new story, and it's just the same story you've already seen with a new perspective or a new character. So there's definitely some questions there.
I'll show you the meaning of love.
Okay.
That won't do.
Oh, waffle cakes.
Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Frogwares, quote, has not created the Sinking City re-release on Steam. So you can finally buy the Sinking City once again. Sinking City was a average game that seemed slightly racist, but it was based on a Lovecraft type story, or the writer of the Lovecraft stories who was slightly racist, so they kind of did it as best as they could, I think, there, being true to the story, without changing the game too much and being an SJW about it. If anything, they probably should be applauded for not being super SJW about it. The game was delisted from Steam and several other storefronts as part of a dispute between Frogwares and the game publisher, Nacon. Frogwares says that Nacon has breached its publishing agreement in various ways. Nacon naturally believes otherwise. Most recently, Nacon was allowed to return to the game to sale on digital storefronts, while the court case is still ongoing. Let's see. French judge confirmed that Nacon can sell the game on digital storefronts while the court case is still in progress. However, the particular version of the game is lacking some important elements. The new Steam version has no achievements whatsoever. Furthermore, it also doesn't have any of the game's DLC content that's been released to date. The new release has prompted Frogwares to respond in a short public statement that was also released on the game's Steam community feed, which is interesting that they would allow it to be on the community feed in the middle of this whole complaint and lawsuit. But I guess maybe it was just posted on the community feed and not an official post. Let's see. It's unclear if Frogwares will receive any compensation for the latest Steam release of the version. Frogware, however, has recently released a PS5 version of the game on its own as the sole owner and publisher of the platform. They've reached out. And
Wrong pill.
achievements missing is not a big deal. DLC missing is a bit of a deal. I feel like what this really boils down to is maybe Frogwares only made the DLC parts of the game, and maybe a secret other party that's not being named actually made the main game. We've seen both Nacom and Frogwares seemingly somewhat guilty of some shenanigans, so I wouldn't be super surprised if it turned out that there's just something going on here. And see, when I try to see this statement, it's just not loading at all. I'm just getting a spinning Steam logo, which even in that's weird because I've never seen this spinning Steam logo at all. So what we can do here is we can see that the Sinking City on Steam right now is mostly negative. And we can probably come down here. Before you buy, this is an old version of the game. There's no DLC, no cloud saves, no achievement. It's not the same version that got released by Frogwares early January, and Frogwares has said it hasn't released any news about this release. So I doubt that they'll ever see the money, which is why I recommend staying away from this until they do not buy. It's a scam version from Nacon. Buy it from Frogwares directly. So pretty much tons of negative responses here. And so Frogwares seems to be the favored in popular opinion, at least as far as this. What's funny is this is labeled as Frogwares, being the developer. More on the line though, you would see that it's showing up on their website, and there's, if you wanted to support Frogwares, you might do better doing any of the Sherlock Holmes games. But Frogwares was also in a fight with the Sherlock Holmes games too, so I just feel like there's some shenanigans happening both ways. I just have a hard time believing that Frogwares is 100% the innocent party. So I guess all I can do is put Sinking City on the fall list, and we'll see how that goes. If anything, this is one of those scenarios where you've seen two companies in a fight, and the easiest thing in the world to do is just to disassociate yourself from it and just not play that game. There's plenty of other games where you don't have to worry about one company pulling a scam on another company and ripping them off, or if you care to worry about that at all, and you don't have to worry about getting the wrong version or an older version. If I recall correctly, the Sinking City wasn't particularly a great, well-polished games in the first place, so I would be very concerned about there being just a ton of bugs and glitches in the game, and that directly affecting your experience. So yeah, that's pretty much something you probably don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Here we have a game on Steam called Hanny, which is visually looks a little too repetitive in the enemy types. Seems to be kind of a fast-paced game where you're always electrocuting something or doing massive damage. Seems like it's probably a bit of an experiment in creating a 3D, they're calling it a roguelike game. But early on you see like different kinds of enemies attacking you, these enemies in particular, and they seem used a lot. Early access 809, English, Korean, Japanese. Guess I'll be generous and put this on the follow list. There's a certain question certainly around the idea of a roguelike, a roguelike in 3D in general, because that's just not something I think I've ever seen actually succeed, where you would want to run around in 3D.
How did you avoid my trap? I'll hit the vanguard.
Yeah, that's just something I don't know. I don't know if that ever worked. This isn't video game related per se, but a Skyrim board game is coming to Modifus via crowdfunding. Although I really have to question if fans of Skyrim have enough free time between playing Skyrim mods and playing Skyrim anyways that they want to play a board game. Gamma Sutra has an article here. The Luna head, Mark Whitten, has left Amazon for Unity, which definitely does not sing the praises for Amazon Luna or Amazon in general. There was like a new person just put in charge of Amazon, so this might just be a case where the new person in charge of Amazon's game development branches is cleaning house and getting rid of people who haven't been able to right the ship. Here's Gamma Sutra's article of reportedly EA has canceled the new property Gaia after 6 years in development at EA Motive, which you never really get the full truth there when a game has been in development hell and canceled, but there is a slight thought that hopefully something was learned and some bit of code was used in some game, but you never know. It could just be 100% dump the code down the trash, don't use any of it. Here we have a game called Pandemic by Prisms, which seems to be a VR game. Well, we're seeing these images not load still, so I'll try and get that to work. It's a VR game for $7.99, English full audio. Yeah, it seems like it's probably mostly asset flip people, where you're following the spread of a pandemic and some mini games. They call it an algebra learning game. I have a hard time believing that. There's a real problem there, though. If this is supposed to be an educational game for, well, they do have a nice trick there in which everybody's just wearing medical blue gloves. But if this is supposed to be for kids, you've got to put them in an expensive VR headsets, which very possibly, if not cleaned well, would spread a pandemic in the real world. And then you're going to try and have them do algebra in VR? I think not. Yeah, inherently, almost every educational game comes off as just a terribly dumb thought, even if it isn't in VR. I'd like to see some smart educational games out there. I've just yet to see any in my lifetime. Checkraptor has an article here. Dinos Reborn gives Ark some competition next year. Well, if Ark still has a fan base, I would have a hard time believing that whoever would be interested in a game like Ark would want to jump over. However, seeing these graphics, that does seem to make it look a lot more interesting. Like, I feel like Ark's graphics haven't looked in a while, probably aren't as good as this is. And being trapped on a dinosaur planet is not a terrible thought. I could see a Borderlands game definitely working for me if it was fighting dinosaurs instead of skags and monsters in the end, you'd still probably end up shooting a lot of humans anyways. So yeah, Dino's Reborn looks like it might be slightly interesting. Next, we have a game on Steam called Project Entertainment System, which looks like it's kind of a troll joke game based on the visuals. Like, it feels like there could have been a game here, but there's a little too many problems visually here that make it look like a troll joke game. $9.99, English full audio. Yep. You're definitely gonna have a hard time convincing me to play a game that looks like you didn't take the development of your own game seriously. So there is a certain line where if something looks like a joke game, even if it isn't a joke game, I will still make that assumption and never give it the time of day. Moving on, TechRaptor has Google Stadia's launch troubles detailed in a new report. I heard rumors that like the one Google Stadia game that had been made in-house has been broken for weeks, and they fired all the engineers, so there's nobody to even fix it. Google didn't even follow their own Google formula. Yeah. It'd be really hard to believe that Stadia is even going to be talked about in 4 or 5 years. There might be something that they learned from that experiment, and there might be a background services using the technology for Stadia, but they at this point need to rebrand it and rename it. Gamma Sutra has an article. Valve has been ordered to comply with Apple's request for Steam data. California magistrate judge has ordered Valve to comply with Apple's recent request for financial data on over 400 Steam titles, which I am surprised the judge would be willing to do that, because I don't believe this lawsuit has anything to do with Valve. Earlier this month, Apple approached Steam for data about the yearly sales of apps, IAPs, and external products, in-app purchases, and external products, alongside the details about Steam revenue. The iPhone maker said the information would be used in its long-running legal battle with Epic by allowing it to calculate the total size of the market for the Epic digital distribution channels. Yeah, so this is the Fortnite Apple lawsuit, and Valve doesn't want to be involved in it, and why a judge would have allowed them to leak all that internal proprietary data seems insane. Like, was this the plan all along? A paranoid mind must ask. Was this a case where Epic Store, in its effort to defeat Valve, simply got into a false lawsuit with Apple so that Apple could then demand information it could leak to its competitor? That is certainly a paranoid thought. Samsung also seemingly handed over data, which now puts Valve in a weird position. Valve pushed back against Apple and essentially told the company it didn't see how data pulled from a completely different platform and market would have any relevance in the case. Somehow, in the dispute over mobile apps, a maker of PC games that does not compete in the mobile market or sell apps is being portrayed as a key finger, said Valve. It is not. If anything, what this opens up the thought to more than anything is Valve should be selling mobile apps. Valve is now told, the judge has told Valve to share data on 436 specific titles sold through Steam from 2017 onward. I wonder what those specific games are. I imagine they are I wonder if any of those are games that have cell phone ports, or if they are just kind of a random assortment of games that Apple specifically picked.
Go on, dear wind. Time to tidy things up.
I guess that's the best I can do. Here we have Judge Hickson said Valve had until mid-March to comply with the order, telling its legal team that, quote, Apple assaulted the earth with subpoenas, so don't worry, it's not just you, end quote. Well, if the judge has that attitude, which probably is grounds for a mistrial in general,
Curse 'em.
then why did he approve these subpoenas? The Epic Apple trial will go back into court in May. And I wouldn't be surprised if Valve tries to appeal that decision, that judge's decision, as high as it can appeal it, which I mean, you kind of have the right to appeal things all the way to the Supreme Court in almost every case. So we might be headed to a Supreme Court fight just over whether Valve wants to give out proprietary data to someone that easily could be a competitor. Moving on, we have a game called Berserker, which seems like you play as a Viking Berserker in the side-scrolling beat-em-up. $1.73 English only. For that price, they're not asking a lot, so I think I can put this on the fall list and see if anybody reviews it. We are not getting any victories today again. Deck rebuilds definitely need to income and be improved upon. I just want to hurry up and finish. Here we have another game called Viking Story. It feels like ever since Valheim came out that we're starting to see more and more Viking games. This looks like garbage. I did notice that the Three Vikings game, which is not on Steam, which is an old game made by Activision, I believe, or a company that owned Activision or Blizzard. That is owned, a company that is owned by Activision and Blizzard. Three Vikings is a lot like the game Trine, although 2D and older. So yeah, there might be an argument towards trying to get Three Vikings if it ever is on Switch, but I don't think it will be. We are still very much in that position where me specifically getting Activision Blizzard games on Battle.net, and which is really the only storefront they're willing to sell their games on, is just not interesting to me. So I'm more than willing to just miss out on a Diablo 2 remaster if they're not willing to put it on some other platform. If anything, there is an argument to go down in quality, get the Diablo 2 remaster on the Switch, and then you can combine the proprietary storefront of Nintendo with the proprietary storefront of Activision Blizzard, assuming it comes out on the Switch.
Doesn't this land just fill you with reverence?
Let's see. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Destiny 2's Witch Queen and future updates have been detailed by Bungie. I guess if that interests you, I couldn't care less. Next game is tagged sexual content, so let me see if it is YouTube family friendly. Well, I think it is. Here we have a cat girl licking up water off the floor, which is somewhat sexual in nature. And then we have some other decently animated characters. It looks like there's 2 of them. Apparently this is coming out. It's not even out yet, and it's English, Russian, Chinese, and German. And that's Celine Apoptosis. Apoptosis? I feel like I've heard that word before, but I don't know what it means. The publisher is Flat Chest Developer, which is interesting. And let's see, what else? We have a game called Lucy Got Problems from this developer publisher, which is very positive. And I think that is more elves. Flat Chest Dev. Yeah, that's quite the name. I guess I'll put this on the fall list, but honestly I need to have a come to Jesus moment as far as just how many adult games really need to be in my wish list and how many adult games I'd really want to cover, because I don't think this is of a quality that would make it in the top 10. And that's basically what I've been saying about JRPGs, is that I would only be willing to play like the top 10 of those, or fighting games, I'd only be willing to play the top 10 series of those. Next we have a game on Steam called Coup King, which I guess is supposed to be cooking, but you also could mispronounce that in a weird way. What's funny is this actually looks like you are cooking more than anything, in the sense that it looks like it is one of those Doodle God games where you drag 2 ingredients to create a new ingredient.
Now, if you would please do right.
And that might be exactly what happens. Or maybe it's something different than that. $4.49 English Hungarian. I want to put that on the fall list. I'd love to see a game that actually taught people how to cook, or at least recipes. It still takes more than that to actually learn how to cook, but
My sword serves as a powerful talisman.
but yeah, normally you see things like Cooking Mama and games like that, and they barely get anywhere close to accurately describing the ingredients, the weights and measurements of the ingredients, and the methods to actually merge ingredients together. This game says it has 200 ingredients. And see, I relatively recently played Iron Chef Brigade as a cooking game, and that was really just a match 3 puzzle game that had nothing to do with food or cooking or real world food at all. It was all these made up dishes, and it was a real mistake in my book, because making a game that is supposed to be like Iron Chef and ignoring the fact that that would be obviously a fetish game around the fetish of food being cooked well and looking really good is kind of ridiculous. It wasn't like, even if they had not gone high dining with it and simply just made a standard standard fast food style of experience, I would have still
My blade is your salvation.
appreciated real food. Next we have a game called Triple, or Tri-Pill, which looks like it's just a Dr. Mario clone of no real quality. $2.79. See, I don't know. Yeah, I have about 10 more tabs. Ever since I moved where I put the Humble Bundle tab, the iconic H favorite icon is in a different place, so I don't know if I've actually hit the end of the long list of tabs I have open. Favorite icons, by the way, are a bit of an issue where a new vulnerability has been discovered, a way of using favorite icons which are automatically downloaded by almost every browser. You can do a whole bunch of redirects and create a unique icon that's like a super cookie that you can't really clear your cache or anything from, and track people to see if they've been to that site or not, even if they were using like a VPN or something else to hide it. It's not really something that I think is a super vulnerability as far as maliciousness. It is just a privacy vulnerability as far as being tracked. The favorite icons don't have something in them that lets you upload a virus or anything. They just are not allowing you to hide things. And things like incognito mode, which almost always is less useful than you would think it should be, do not reduce that vulnerability. Alright.
Winds of light, show your might.
Come meet my god. As
Can I
god
possibly win here? Next we have a game on Steam, Sunny Tomatin X. Looks like it is a side-scrolling hack and slash game. Yeah, doesn't look particularly good. $12.59, English, Japanese. No, that definitely is a pass. Oh, I'm about to lose. Gamma Sutra has job listings for Square Enix in Tokyo, Japan. They're looking for experienced game developers. So they're apparently trying to scale up. I think we had already seen some job listings from Square Enix, so we kind of knew that they were scaling up. But with 3 different Final Fantasy games in development, it's not super surprising that that's the case. And I think with that, we're going to just not play any further. I'm still... I could really do to get one Dragoncraft Havencraft victory, and then at least in that case I would have 2 new things to do on Monday, but I'll see if I can do that off screen. Here we have 100 hidden snails too, which we're seeing an increased number of these hidden object black and white games. $1.79, English only. They've got the bundle now up to $8.29. They're not asking a lot, but they're not delivering a lot either. Yeah, we have a game called Lotus Bloom, which looks like it's a single screen puzzle game. It doesn't look terrible. I don't understand the puzzles though. $1.69, English only. I guess that has to go on the fall list to see if people can figure out whether they like those puzzles or not. Here we have a game called SpaceNet. I feel like I finally started to wake up today too, and it's for normal people only a couple hours before it's time to go back to sleep. SpaceNet looks like nothing. It's $8.39, English only. Yeah, check out there has the same article. Square Enix announces 2 new Final Fantasy VII titles. I looked up online how to get a crispier frozen pizza, and they said to put oil on the bottom of the pan in the pizza, and so I did something like that last night and had quite a nice pizza. Also, I also preheated it, so that probably played a role also. Next we have a game called Hellsign. This feels like there was a game somewhat similar to that name many, many years ago. This is not that game, though. This might be somewhat similar to Hellgate London. Mostly positive, $17.99. English, Spanish, and Russian. Alright, well, this looks like it might be an interesting action RPG top-down game where you're fighting horrors of the afterlife. So I probably should just put it on the fall list, on the wish list, but I'll leave it on the fall list for the moment. Man, I'm gonna have to run to the bathroom. A Halo live-action TV series moves from Showtime to Paramount Plus, which, okay, that I guess tells you that it's still in development and nothing else, although now in development of someone else. We have a game called Animal Drop Safari, which is Candy Crush, basically, from HH Games. $6.29, English, French, and German. I'll put this on the follow list. I don't know if I can justify ever playing anything that is just Candy Crush. I definitely can't justify playing Candy Crush considering how bad Candy Crush cheats to make you purchase in-app purchases. It literally cheats. I hacked the game and still wasn't able to beat some levels. Gematsu has an article here. The Bloodborne producer Masaki Yamagiwa is going to leave Sony Interactive Studio at the end of February. We already knew about this, but this article, I guess, is just more focused on that specific person. Although the articles in Gematsu aren't really that big anyways. Here we have a PS4 Switch game called Maglam Lord with the Juliet trailer, which not sure what kind of game this is. Looks like it's a RPG game, very possibly a mobile RPG game being ported, or just a low effort RPG game being ported. It's being voiced by Misaka Watada, if you recognize that voice actress. I certainly wouldn't recognize any voice actresses, Japanese voice actresses, or frankly Western voice actresses. Here we have a game called Song of Farka Prologue. Looks like it is half visual novel, half adventure puzzle game. Let's see, English, Russian, and Chinese. I think it's easier just to put this on here. Hacker P1 is apparently what she's doing. I did have a thought of a game where you played as a hacker many years ago, and how you would best implement that and what kind of story you would tell around that. And I'm not saying that these people stole my idea. If anything, I would say enough people didn't have that idea, and a game like that should have come out and been successful at this point. Like years ago, there should have been some kind of Matrix style. You're a hacker in a world, Watch Dogs sort of, but even Watch Dogs hasn't been majorly successful. I think there is probably an argument there, though, that being a programmer myself, I'm more intrigued with the idea than the average person, and that probably is why that kind of game hasn't come out and succeeded. Here we have a game called Farm Dungeons, which looks like it's just an RPG maker game, which we haven't been seeing a ton of those. $1.99, English, Japanese. Yeah, if anything, because of the fact that what's on Steam and Twitter have just been giving me trouble, I probably missed several low effort games. I also wouldn't be surprised if Valve is maybe starting to be less willing to approve low effort games. But here we have a game called Conspiracy Girls, which looks like it's a visual novel. What's interesting about this visual novel is that they're drawing them all the way to their knees when usually they're more zoomed in and they stop at the belly. Of course, when you have text over it, that may still stop at the belly. Each of these characters seem fairly poorly drawn and out of place. Anatomically speaking, they seem to be shifted in weird angles in unnatural positions. At a certain point, it makes an argument to use photo referencing and tracing if you don't know how to draw someone naturally, but you also have to get good at some point and actually be able to draw things naturally. This is free to play, English only. One-shot visual novel, probably doesn't have branching paths. I don't think there's anything specific about this that would need to be put on the follow list. Check it out if you're interested. Gamma Sutra mentioned the semiconductor shortage hitting console production to be investigated by the White House. They've spun this story to be more around console production when in actuality semiconductor shortages in general have just been a big issue. There was a big snowstorm in Texas that shut down some of the chip manufacturers. There's not a lot of chip manufacturers in the United States anyways, and the whole world needs to get away from China manufacturing all the chips and Asia manufacturing all the chips anyways, but we also have to find places with certain deposits of rare earth minerals and other elements, and we need to be able to actually build things without using slavery and not making it incredibly expensive as far as chip manufacturing or near slavery conditions like China does. And we need to figure out ways to replace rare earth minerals, which I think mostly you could, but they're just more expensive. We don't know. Personally, I don't know how much the United States government is capable of doing in the short run or even in the long run. I wouldn't be surprised if they just form a commission that gives a report and then nobody acts on that report for decades. Whereas if there was somebody that was actually more in charge of anything, you would think the industry themselves could get together and build more manufacturing plants in the first place, but that costs money and they don't want to spend money. Honestly, without going on to a crazy socialist rant, as I sometimes do, the solution to the fab problem is a problem, when you think about it, of companies not being willing to reinvest into infrastructure and future development, and instead wanting to take their profits and put it in the pockets of shareholders and the board members and the upper management. So the solution to those problems can be addressed in part by simply having a maximum amount that a CEO can be paid, a poverty ceiling or a wage ceiling. As we have like a minimum wage, we should have a maximum wage. That stops managers and upper management from being overpaid. Considerable limitations on public ownership of businesses, so limiting shareholders, limiting how much can be paid in dividends to shareholders, perhaps getting rid of the idea of shareholders getting paid in dividends in general, limiting the maximum that a stock price could even be sold as. Right now it's the sky's the limit that a share of a company can go just up and up and up. Limiting the size of companies in general also could fix a lot of these issues. At least would diversify the number of companies. Last thing we need is Tesla to become the new manufacturer for 98% of all chips in the world. We need like 20 smaller companies to be different companies. And we need more competition in the one place where competition would actually be useful. But yeah, there's ways to fix this, but they are ways that have to strike at the core of corrupt capitalism and corrupt politics and do away with those elements. And those are going to be the big speed bumps, or just incompetent capitalism and incompetent politics. Moving on, we have a game called Rome 2077 Space Wars, which looks like it's a space shoot 'em up game. There's nothing there. $9.99, English only. Yeah, I still don't like space games. Here we have a game called Arcaxer, which it looks like an RPG. It looks a little low effort though, too. Let's see, it's jump around here and see if I can see anything here that would make me feel like this is something I'd want to play. Nah, it just seems like it's all over the place. It's a VR game for $24.99, English only. Yeah, and it really just feels like it's a combination of a bunch of random stuff in VR. Yeah, we have a game called Sea of Blood, which is also clearly just a combination of random stuff. This time, maybe not on VR. $8.99, English only. Nothing there of interest. 4 more tabs and then we'll wrap up. Here we have a game called Room to Grow, which seems like it's a puzzle game of some sort, where you play as a cactus growing. Kind of like the opposite idea of a snake game, which you're trying to avoid obstacles. In this one, you're trying to push them away. $7.99, a bunch of languages. That's too expensive, but I'm going to put it on the follow list just to see if people like it. Almost certainly that's the kind of game that nobody would ever bother to review. Gamatsu has the Octopath Traveler shipments and digital sales topping 2.5 million. Remember, this game was released on Steam in June of 2019, which that is probably pushing a lot of its continued sales. It's not a huge amount of sales, but it's a decent amount for a lesser known game by far. Here we have a game called Crazy Flasher Series 2021, which seems like it is a low effort MS Paint game. And one of those screenshots looks like there might be a topless girl in it. So I guess I'm glad that didn't load. There's a ton of screenshots here, and some of them definitely look like they're from different games. This is 99 cents English and Chinese, and yeah, I just don't think there's a product there. And then we have one in Asian characters that's tagged as an RPG, and this doesn't want to load things. You can see this is already mixed by the time I got to it. English is not supported for this game. It's $10.79. Screenshots are not loading. I don't inherently hate the thumbnail or the art style, but I bet the gameplay is pretty much nothing. If anything, I think when they are drawing characters, it looks fine. Okay. So then that brings me to the Humble Bundle store, and it would be kind of weird if we had any new game bundles, since we have like 4 of them going right now, and there's 3 days left in 2 of them. So no new Humble Bundles, which then that brings me to Twitter, and a new Pokemon game was announced. I didn't have an article around it. It's probably just been teased though, so that's so yeah, it does seem like it's going to be something. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes are apparently on their way, which great. Are they going to be like Let's Go Pikachu games, or are they just going to be masters of the Diamond and Pearl games? If anything, I don't feel like the series of Pokemon went Pokemon Yellow and then went to Diamond and Pearl. I feel like there was the silver and gold versions in between that, and maybe that the silver and gold versions were just general remakes of blue and red. Maybe that's the case, and so maybe it doesn't matter. Yeah, Twitter is still not really showing a lot of tweets, and we might be at a point where we're just hitting the end of Twitter, which that's my news source, so I don't know what I'm gonna do then. Yeah, the only thing new that come out on Steam is this game called My Dear Frankenstein, which looks like it's a Asian visual novel with some puzzles, point and click, $4.99, Japanese only. I probably would have passed on this game anyways, but there's a little bit of graphical interest there. Here is Open Critic saying, during Nintendo's latest Pokemon Presents event, it announced that Pokemon Diamond and Pearl are receiving remakes. Entering Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, these remakes will release for the Nintendo Switch later this year. The game's not being developed by Game Freak, but are instead being worked on by ILCA, the studio behind Pokemon Home. ILCA's Yuichi Ueda and Game Freak's Junichi Masuda, the director of the original Diamond and Pearl, will be directing the remakes. Let's see. Diamond and Pearl were originally released in 2007. The games were released for the Nintendo DS and featured 3D graphics. They also feature a realistic day and night cycle of certain Pokemon appearing depending on when gamers were playing the titles. Diamond and Pearl took advantage of the DS dual screens, allowing players to control segments of the games through the handheld bottom screen. It's unknown how Diamond and Pearl will change for the controls of the Switch. The real thing to search here, though, let me come over here and let's just Google this. See if we can get a Wikipedia listing. As far as Diamond and Pearl go. Why is this off? Turn that back on. Alright. So they are the first installments of the 4th generation of Pokemon video game series. So, yeah. Here we have the timeline. Red and blue and yellow. And yellow was the one that added Pikachu. And they remade that with Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. And then they had Pokemon Red and, well, it was Red and Green. Maybe in Japan, and then Red and Blue in the West. Red and green. Interesting. It's labeled as red and green, but I'm not seeing, when I hover over it, anything. Alright, but then you have Diamond and Silver, which is the 2nd generation. And then you have Crystal, which is an enhanced version of Gold and Silver. But you would think that would be the next thing you would do as far as a whole new area. And then you have Ruby and Sapphire. And then Fire, Fire Green and Leaf Green. And then Emerald. And then you get to Diamond and Pearl after that, which is the first game in the 4th generation. Which that seems like you're just skipping a lot of generations there, in which Pokemon were added and new land and new story was added as far as enemies go. So yeah, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl now coming out as a remake. Skipping over some. Maybe they're right to do that though. At a certain point it does pretty much imply that they should not go crazy with the Pokemon series, considering how the actual numbered Pokemon series, the most recent ones, weren't well received. It does make a lot of sense to potentially not try and gouge people and sell 4 to 6 remakes of old games. They also, I guess, announced this game, Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is going to be an open world action role-playing game that will serve a prequel to the Diamond and Pearl experience. So they may very well be instead merging all of the first 3 generations. Let's see. Well, but no, it's focused on the Sinnoh region. Set during the Meiji Restoration part of time. Interesting. So it'll be back in time for the world of Pokemon as a prequel, but in the Sinnoh region, which, if we just click on Pokemon, can we find something that mentions regions? Let's see. First generation, second generation. Second generation included 100 new species of Pokemon and new gameplay features. New moves. And then it included a new region, Johto, in the second generation. Third generation, or remakes of Red and Green. Not to be confused with Red and Blue. Third generation had 135 new Pokemon, bringing them up to 386 Pokemon. And a new region, Hoenn. First time you could change the protagonist's gender, also, if that matters. Then fourth generation, we already know, was in a different region. What generation are we up to, though? Yeah, fifth generation did 156 new Pokemon. Did they have a new region too? Probably. Or at certain points you can also go back to old regions and just change the timeline, which is obviously what they're doing. Then you have a sixth generation. And then seventh generation. And then I guess we are now on the 8th generation. Okay. And there's this fairly complicated chart to explain everything. I wish I had seen this chart first. So Red Green gets remade in Fireleaf Green, but it's for the Game Boy Advance at that point. Gold Silver is remade as Crystal in the same way that as an upper version. So if you were going to go back and play them, you would play Pokemon Yellow, then Crystal, then Emerald, then Platinum, or you'd go back and play Fireleaf Green and Heart Gold, Soul Silver, which came out 9 years after Crystal. And then for the 4th generation you have Diamond and Pearl replaced with Platinum, but then also Ruby and Silver has been remade with Omega, Ruby and Sapphire. Man, you'd have to do a lot of research here. And then you have a 5th generation of Black and White and Black and White 2, which are derivative versions and apparently have no remakes. And Let's Go Pikachu is a remake all the way of Yellow, which resets all the remakes. And then Diamond and Pearl, which is the 4th generation, goes that way. And then, let's see. The 6th generation just has X and Y, and they've pretty much forgotten about that and never made any remake. Then they made Sun and Moon, and then they made Ultra Sun and Moon. And then the 7th generation, I guess, the 7th generation Sun and Moon was released both for the 3DS and the Switch. And Shield and Sword are the 8th generation, which I definitely understand why you couldn't remake that, or maybe make a better version of that, although there would be an argument to making a better version of that. So that was a long journey, to say the least. Yeah, here we have a game on Steam called Bomb Gears, which looks like nothing. Looks like it's just a player versus player, a bombing game. $4.99. Yeah, seems like you're just trying to get the trajectory and play against each other. A procedurally generated world by the looks of it. Here we have a game called ASCII Brave Cat, which is a little too zoomed in, but it almost feels like it might be a decent collection of Mario-esque games and old NES 2D style games. $8.99 is way too expensive though. I'm going to put it on the fall list just in case people love it, but I feel like there's just a lot of different gameplay here, which means probably none of it plays very well. Okay, well, then I want to just retest my Twitter feed to see if anything new has happened. No, it hasn't. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this stream then. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.